Hello and welcome to everyone. Today we are going to be talking about a topic which is close to everyone's heart across the world and more so in India. And last 18 months has shown us how important is health and everything related to healthcare for all of us, for our families, for our colleagues, everyone around us. And then today we are joined by brilliant young entrepreneurs who are creating new frontiers for us as a country, as entrepreneurs, as startup space, by doing and building some innovative solutions. Welcome to season 3 of Money Matters Build and Grow in association with HSBC. And of course, I'm joined by someone we look up to, Prakash Jaiswal, who is the country head of business banking, MSME and startups in HSBC India. Thanks, Prakash. Thank you for joining today. And let me name the entrepreneurs who are with us today. Vivek Tiwari, founder, Medica Bazaar. Delhi D'Souza, co-founder, Health Assurance. Faizan Aziz, co-founder, Myra Medicines. And Satish Kannan, co-founder and CEO, MediBuddy. Very excited to be talking to all of you. Thank you so much for joining today. Want to kickstart this discussion by asking all of you, what has this last 18 months meant? How do you see, our whole healthcare ecosystem shaping up, responding to the pandemic? And what does it mean for you as entrepreneurs, as builders in the health tech space? And then Vivek, we could start with you.
Thanks, Shraddha. Thank you, Prakash, for inviting me here on this panel today. And hello to everyone. So let me just quickly start with a brief introduction on what we do. So Medica Bazaar is essentially a B2B platform for medical supplies, and we essentially connect with medical providers, healthcare providers, caregivers largely on the platform itself to get various medical supplies on time. And that is how we operate all over India. And we are now connecting about 100,000 plus customers on the platform today. So in last 18 months, what we have really seen the way times have changed. I'll tell you, like 6 years back when I started this platform, it was more of a discovery platform. People were doing traditional way of procurement. They were trying to still follow the old traditional processes, traditional means of procurement, and digital was not the way to go, right? It was something very distinct and unique. That point in time, people were just being more cautious with digital platforms, and there were a lot of reluctance in getting to digital platforms. But now in last 18 months, if I tell you, we have seen massive surge happening. We have seen more than 15 to 20 times kind of growth on the platform in terms of people coming and the way they are looking at especially procurement practice, and then the way we have seen the customer registrations also increase. So the way the digital has penetrated in last 18-20 months is phenomenal. That is what we have seen as a platform. There is a strong likeliness for customers to come and to explore and to look at various solutions what we offer. And this is how the changes have happened mostly in last 18-20 months. And as Shraddha just started with the comment that health has been the largest driver for us, for all of us in our lives in last 18-20 months, I think that's how it has been, especially at the forefront of in terms of looking at various medical requirements, especially even from various customers also, various consumers also, coming onto the platform, trying to look at oxygen concentrators, pulse oximeters, remdesivir and all of that. So we were, and I tell you, like in pandemic, especially during the surge of wave in phase 1 or phase 2, we were deeply engaged with the customers, and it's been very unprecedented kind of a surge which happened, and it kept us on the toes. And this is how we are seeing, the changes happening. So I'll take a pause here, and then, we can move on to others. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Vivek. And very, you are alluding to what is happening now in the country, right? Like what pandemic, for all the devastation it caused, it also got us to understand the value, because as a country, as people, I would say all of us, we think healthcare, health tech, or jo bhi hai wo baad mein hoga, right? But now what you're saying is that it's right at the forefront, and it's happening, and you're seeing it, and your data, your users, your customers are showing it. Yeah, thank you. Delhi, if you could please chime in.
Sure. Good afternoon, Shraddha. Good afternoon, Prakash. Thanks for having me on this call. 2020 was a challenging year for all of us, adapting to the new world orders. Having said that, the opportunities in health tech emerged to manage the demands of the market. The disruption of the health services on the ground gave more serious push to services like teledoctor. Access to COVID testing took precedence. Lockdowns impacting mental wellness were some of the opportunities knocking at our door. One of the major takeaways for us would be adaptability, assessing the situation around and changing our strategy. Be it looking at managing our cost better or going all out aggressive behind some new opportunities, or a balance of both. At Health Assure, we did both. We focused on the new opportunities. Considering our traditional business lines, the health checkup business suffered and were impacted. Having said that, we also managed our cost structures on the existing business lines. Apart from this, we realigned our focus, sharpened our focus out there. We worked a lot on our internal capabilities, looking at our customer journeys, recalibration of our processes for efficiencies. Externally, we covered huge grounds on our OPD product, from fine-tuning our product to close looping with our partnerships.
Thanks, Delhi. Thank you so much. Satish?
Yeah, maybe just to add to Vivek and Delhi, primarily three things happened in the industry itself, right? When all of this pandemic happened, across the stakeholder, which is the customer, then the doctor, and essentially the government. Now, all these three, there's a significant behavioral change that we have seen, and this is going to sort of stay for the next 5-10 years, and that is going to really define the way the industry is going to evolve. The first is customers, right? Of course, customers, because they could not go to the hospital, they had to quickly adopt digital ways to do it. This is something like a demonetization moment. People actually suddenly started using, let's say, Paytm and different kind of solutions to transfer money. And in a similar way, from a consumer point of view, that significantly changed. And two is on the doctor and the hospitals. Like Vivek rightly pointed, a lot of doctors used to say, hey, I've got a very busy OPD. You can see a lot of people are waiting in my clinic. And then why do I need software? Why do I need this video calling? Which is true. But then suddenly when pandemic happened, they also were unable to help. So they also were very, very quick in adopting. So a lot of hospitals implemented all these tools. Doctors also learned how to do it. And then across the spectrum from the provider or the doctors, hospitals, all of them actually got online. And third is also very importantly, government, right? In fact, Sudha will know for the last 5 years as a industry body, we have been working with government to see how we can bring in the right set of guidelines for digital healthcare. Now there's a lot of movement on NDHM, UHI, all of it, right? So today, the reason why all of this came to the forefront is also because government really understood that, okay, now is the right time for us to sort of give the right guidelines so that all these companies can flourish as well as help a lot of people. Because there's a lot of concern that doctors were having challenges on, can I do it online? Can I write a prescription? Though it is definitely the right thing to do, but there was no guideline, and that also happened. So I primarily would say these three are the behavior changes, and that is going to stay for the next, let's say, 5 years. And second thing is the same digital adoption that would have taken Flipkart 10 years to get to, right? 2010 Flipkart launches, 2020 Flipkart is like Alipay. It took them 10 years. Potentially, I would say this 10 years would be compressed to maybe 5 years when you look at from a digital healthcare now. And that's sort of my thoughts around what like the last 1 year has contributed to.
Yeah, very important point you pointed out, behavioral changes, because all changes will hinge on that. And we also know, I can say this, but we also, all of you are in the health tech space, so maybe not, that it's very hard to make doctors and healthcare practitioners also change their behavior, which has been running for so many years. And we saw in pandemic that how they shifted, how they changed. And I think that nobody is going to go back to exactly the way things were being done. Yeah, very important point, Satish. Thank you. Faizan?
Hi all. Thank you, Sharda. Thank you, Prakash, for having me on. So let me quickly just take from the consumer side. I've seen three major trends on the consumer side. One is I've seen that on the mental health, there's actually been a lot more focus over the COVID time. And, you can see that, whether it's some angels and whatnot, a lot of companies are sprouting up. And we are also seeing that there's been a significant progress on how consumers are treating towards mental health. And it's not being brushed aside on as another, something not that important as the prior situation. And especially digital transformation is very important for this, because people have that extra layer of safety where they can, talk to somebody, but they don't feel fully exposed. So it gives them that extra edge. The other thing is exactly as Satish pointed out, diagnostics. A lot of people now are actually focusing on diagnostics to be done at home. They don't prefer going to the diagnostic center anymore. That fear of going there and exposing yourself doesn't make any more sense. And obviously, coming back down to the main primary business, which Myra was in, that's medicine delivery. That's seen unprecedented growth. We've had stellar 30-50% month-on-month kind of growth numbers, and that's primarily because a lot of people just don't feel like going to the stores anymore. And in fact, to such an extent that traditional players like Apollo and Manipal, they have also started taking it super seriously. And I don't know if you've seen the Apollo 24/7 revamped app. They've done a pretty phenomenal job. They've hired among the world's best consultants to actually help them with that. So I think it's going in the right direction. That's what I would say.
I want to ask all of you, the critical element in the businesses that you're running in the health tech space would be the data and the tech. And of course, data is sacrosanct, and data is, and then the kind of intelligence that it brings would define, we're talking about personalized medicines that will come, and the next frontier where, based on my genes, I will get the medicine, and so much is being talked about, right? I want to ask all of you, as entrepreneurs, how do you see tech and data in your businesses, and what do you see as the big leverage for scale that you can achieve?
So I think goes without saying that anything what we do, technology has to be at the forefront, right? When I'll just quickly take you through our journey of technology addition to the business, what we are doing, or maybe adding more technology to solving customer problems. And data obviously becomes a part of it, because data is something which keeps on getting generated itself if you have a robust technology platform. When we started as a marketplace, essentially looking at largely solving the three problems, like accessibility problem, affordability problem, or problem to get available, kind of medical supplies. So availability, accessibility, affordability always remained at the forefront. But when we moved on with the journey, we saw that beyond this, customers have huge need of technology in terms of looking what we were offering, maybe something which would integrate and make their entire practice much more efficient and robust, which will save their cost, which will give them real-time, kind of inputs or decision-making options, which can be really helpful to them, maybe reducing their working capital cycle. Because we are largely B2B, we focus on operational side of the business. So we were focused on areas where technology could have really helped develop the operational part of the customer's journey, like something in a hospital setup, what we call as a non-core activity, which is not clinical or highly patient-centric in nature. So we really went on to develop a platform called Visi, which is Intuitive Procurement Intelligent Management Tool. It is used as a SaaS within hospital setup today. It's a patented tool what we have developed today. We also launched Embark, which is essentially looking at equipment lifecycle management tool, which is solving a lot of problem in terms of managing their entire capex, what they are buying or what they are investing upon. So technology has always been kind of a layering factor on the problems which we could see with our customers' journey, and that is how we have been growing our business. In terms of data, I think data in health tech space especially is sensitive to the nature that there's a lot of patient-centric data, there's a lot of clinical data. This has to be HIPAA compliant, this has to be compliant basis various regulations which are there from GDPR, regulations in European Union. But in India, we still don't have such kind of large compliances around medical records or data, which essentially government is taking a step towards. I think National Health Digital Mission especially will take care of such requirements or such compliances in future. But we do have data which we use for enabling our business practice or trying to create much more possible solutions for our customers, especially looking at the consumption data for last so many years, what we have gathered in through with our transactions, or maybe what we have recovered from our customers in terms of in terms of looking at the way they do procurement. So that data itself is going to help a lot, in terms of our seller partners or manufacturers to get the rightful requirement of the products they want to produce and all of that. So we are using technology and data as part of our process and journey. And we certainly want to, put more leverage and more strength to this in the coming days in terms of growing our business.
Thank you. Thanks, Vivek. Delhi?
Sure, Shraddha. So our technology focuses on bringing healthcare closer to employees and customers at large. Now I'll break this down into three key components. The first one being discovery, knowing healthcare around you, which you can trust. The second piece is access across 65,000 combinations of use cases in across 5,000 partners across the country. And third is the discounts up to 50% across our SKUs. Healthcare is complex. Imagine the complexity. There's a customer in remote Aizawl wanting to do a PAT test, ultrasonography out there, which needs a radiologist, a treadmill test, which needs a cardiologist at 9 a.m. at 50% discount. Our technology, our system-based algorithm solves the complexity and throws the answer. And it's been a journey. It's a journey with tech and data. Initially, we started with our system throwing out 3 to 4 partners around, and our team checking with the customer which could be the best answer which suits him. Further, the data which we collected over the years out there helped us to zero in on which is the best partner, which has all the facilities available at that time, having the best customer feedback NPS score. So that's how data and technology has helped us, sitting in one corner of the country, helping customers all across the country. Now, in an industry like ours, our customer grievances cannot exceed 0.5%. Our technology has to mirror the network on the ground. Now that gives us the advantage of giving a standardized customer service without going wrong and managing the country centrally. All the database of our network providers, the primary care network, services, timings, rates, photographs, contact details, allow us to schedule multiple services at the click of the mouse. On the data piece, I would definitely agree with Vivek. It's a long way to go. Having said that, we all are doing bits and pieces of it when it comes to our pieces, but there has to be a very big push from the government as well. Okay. And obviously we do have our internal audits on, we are an ISO compliant organization. We have our internal audits. Plus, we are subject to a lot of client audits because we work with all the insurers as well as with large corporates like the likes of Deloitte. So yes, there is where I believe we are there, but there has to be a lot which comes from the government authorities as well.
Thanks, Delhi. Satish?
Yeah, I think technology is like the real backbone of everything that we do. Right? When I was leaving Philips, my first idea was not like medical. Right? My first idea was I'll build hospitals. I'll build hospitals across the country, and then there'll be many more hospitals. The only constraint was, anyway, there are a lot of hospitals in Bombay. I was in Bombay, actually, Bombay, Pune, Delhi. There's already too many hospitals. Let's travel 100 kilometers outside of these big cities and build out hospitals. The biggest challenge, like you all know, Prakash will understand, capex is very, very high, very difficult to deploy that kind of capital in a place which is 100, 200 kilometers outside the big city, right? And then all the math of ROC and all doesn't match. But the challenge was one on that one. But the second problem, even maybe many, many banking partners would support that one. The real challenge is getting doctors to move out to these centers and also provide great healthcare. Right? Even if you deploy all the capital as well as the machines, you need to get good quality doctors, right? Specialist doctors to travel to these places. So see, India has what, 6 to 8 lakh doctors, out of them only 1.5 lakh doctors are specialists. And all of these specialists, 1.5 lakh doctors, are the pediatricians, gynecologists, cardiologists, neurologists, oncologists, right? And because they've done a lot of studies, they need to be in the big city with the right set of amenities. So the fundamental context itself then does not get solved. So that is also why then I had to resort to figuring out how can we do something, do technology, and then find the right place to transition from online to offline. So today, roughly around 70-75% of all your consultations can be done online. Now, pharmacy sort of is, everybody is aware about, you can press the button and then medicine will get delivered maybe in 2 days. Diagnostic test also to a large extent will come to your house, right? If it can be RT-PCR test, blood test, most of it will get done at home. Only when you have to do X-ray, MRI, ultrasound, you have to still go down in the process. So what happens now is when you like translate, let's say fast forward 5 years in the process, what will happen in the healthcare industry is a lot of primary care and a lot of secondary care, which is what majority of us fall sick in. COVID primarily is primary care, okay? Because it's it's not like tertiary care, right? Unless you get like really challenging health issues, you don't get admitted in the hospital, right? You get a vaccination and you're staying at home. So in summary, the primary care and the secondary care we can do online, which is essentially where mobile phones and internet is going to really help and make the difference. And when they need to get admitted in the hospital, which is the last 20%, so broadly, if 100 people talk to a doctor, only 7 of them need a surgery. This is like the real people who need to get admitted in the hospital. So that means potentially you can help around 80% of the people online, and then the rest 20 of them would go meet a doctor in person. And then out of the 20 people, might be 8 people might have to get admitted in the hospital. So that's essentially how technology will like transform the industry, and which is what we are seeing now. And the same adoption is now, let's say, accelerated, okay, using or due to COVID. COVID has been challenging, but in one direction it's positive, in one direction it's challenging. But at least that's what we see. And the whole idea behind data, I think a lot of conversation is happening now. NDHM has put together a lot of work to see how we can use this data very effectively. The key element in this data was always been electronic medical records. You can say in a lot of other markets, what happens is when you go to a doctor has a record of what are the previous allergies for Satish and what are the previous medicines that Satish has taken. So the new medicine when he writes, right? He's cognizant of the fact that he has got so-and-so health problems. But if you see today, what we do is when we go to hospitals, you might have seen, right? And let's say if you're taking parents or grandparents, you have like a big bag full of records, right? And then you go with it, and then the doctor tells you, show me the records, you're like running through papers, right? But essentially that's what's happening today. And we strongly believe once this data is put together correctly, interoperability becomes very strong, right? You go to hospital A, hospital C can still use the hospital A's data. And all of this is still work in progress, but I think all of that will really help bring equitable access, right, to a lot of people, and then really bring cost down, right? You have to now repeat a lot of tests. You go to place A, you do a test. You go to hospital B, they would say, hey, I need to do test again. I mean, it's necessarily what's happened in the market, right? So hopefully, if you're able to transfer data very effectively, all of this will reduce, and you will be able to provide what we call as personalized care. So I was telling Jim, right? That's like level 3 problem, but level 1 problems, at least I should know, okay, this person has got this health issue. He's been having it for so many years. This is the allergy, and these are the other medications for the other problem, right? You come for some other issue, but you have diabetes, then you need to take care of. So that's broadly how data will like transform. And why we are at the right cusp is, it's a challenging problem that US has. What is the problem? Good quality at high cost. Now, our challenge is good quality at affordable cost, right? To get that thing, the only leveler, right? The only thing that can really make the difference is technology. Nothing else can really make the difference. And that's, I think, what India is good at, hopefully. And we've shown that it might be telco and a lot of other areas. Hopefully we'll show that in digital healthcare also.
Brilliant point, Satish. You know, what I'm hearing from you is that what we did in fintech, right? Today, India is given as an example with UPI, right? And it's now moving to different geographies, and people are talking about it. We need health stack. We need health stack with a singular UPI sort of thing. Yeah, it's a very brilliant point, and everyone watching will agree with me. All of us have experienced this, that or wo fir kahin bhi fake dete hain the thing that we carry, and then every time you have to redo everything. Yeah, a basic level of solutioning we need over here. Brilliant, thank you. Faizan.
Yeah, so quickly, just to add on what Satish has been saying, technically the challenge has always been collecting the data and then giving it to a situation such that we actually come to affordable care. Because you see, the biggest problem in India is affordable care. To just give you a little example, you see people want medicines fast. This is very obvious. Everybody wants it fast. But there is no other way to reduce your delivery time, but to actually put medicines closer to you. But when you put medicines closer to you, exactly as everybody will understand, there is a cash flow cost. It goes up. right? Because we have to spend more on inventory. And this is one of the biggest areas where data has helped us significantly. So what we do is we use all the prior information from the customers and the kind of sales that they've done, and using it with weather data and with a bunch of other things to go ahead and predict what medicines you require at what time, and essentially bring it closer, much, much, much more closer to you in a warehouse that's just maybe 15, 20 minutes away. And that allows us to actually give you that medicine fast enough, but not increasing your cost, not charging you an absurd price of 100 rupee extra delivery free. No, we don't need to do that, because the beauty is, because our cash flows are controlled, we can give it to you at the right price. So I think I completely agree with what Satish is saying, and it is definitely helping us here.
Prakash, are you taking the third question?
Yes, let me take the third question.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And I think I've been listening to the first two rounds of questions Shraddha asked, and I see two themes, right? One is the whole large domestic opportunity, which is the business opportunity, and the whole, and I completely agree with Satish, saying there is a time has come to build a health stack in this country, and in the financial stack is really, really showing its benefit. But my question is a slightly different one. And I think Satish said that tech will become the equalizer. It will become more democratic. But that also brings another thought, that can it cross boundaries? So my question is, what's your thought? And I want to hear from everyone, what the international opportunities in health tech? I know there is a very large opportunity in India, which we will take years to serve. But what about tech helping international aspirations? Maybe we can start with you, Satish.
No, absolutely, Prakash. I think, like, right, India is sort of like a hotbed for all the innovations. And because we have the size as well as the scale of operations, we are able to find out the right solution and then sort of deploy this in other markets. I did this at Philips also. Philips, we were actually redesigning a cath lab machine. So people who get heart attack, they get admitted in the hospital, they put a stent in the heart. So that's done using a machine called cath lab. So the whole idea behind Philips also was these cath labs were made primarily for US and Europe markets. When they brought this to India, they understood, oh, this is very costly. But then when we redesigned that at a very low cost, and that is going then to Southeast Asian markets, right? So primarily, I strongly believe that a lot of our solutions that we're building in India, which is very similar, right? I'll give you an example. So you go to Indonesia. Indonesia is also, okay, the geography of Indonesia is such that it's a lot of islands, right? You see a lot of islands, you go to Malaysia. So all of these solutions that we are building in India, and because they're technology led first, and there might be a customer on one side, there is a mobile phone, internet infrastructure, and payment infrastructure. These are three critical parts of you need a young population to adopt new technologies. That's like very important part of the whole equation, because a lot of my investors come from Japan and they say, we always had internet. We always had mobile phones, but we still don't have so much innovation. The only answer is you need to have a lot of young people also to adopt to all of these solutions, right? So a lot of solutions that we build in India can be like very easily deployed to Southeast Asian markets, MENA region, LATAM, Africa, right? I still am keeping sort of the developed markets out because they are very different regulatory structure and they're very advanced in technology. And it's also very costly or what different state for a company from India to sort of maybe compete. SaaS, we are sort of very good at, but when it comes to healthcare, there is an element of providers, which is doctors, and regulation. So these two are very strict in, let's say, in the healthcare space. So I strongly believe these are the markets that we can all go towards, and a solution that has achieved size and scale, as well as understood the nuances of healthcare for that matter, can potentially look at these markets, and all of them are right. And you'll see a lot of this happening. At MediBuddy, today the focus is on India. And I think, like you rightly pointed, at least for the 18 to 24 months, the focus is in India and try and scale. But Southeast Asia, MENA, all of them are strong markets to look at.
Sure. No, thanks, Satish. Delhi, you would like to share your views?
Sure, Prakash. What we are focusing right now is on the OPD insurance. If you look at the market traditionally, insurers cover the IPD piece of it, whereas OPD is all which is out of the pockets for consumers, customers out there. So we believe that this is a very, very big opportunity, the next big thing which can, take us to the next level out there. We have been talking to some of the investors in Middle East and Southeast Asia. And when they look at our model, they say it's very, very unique for us to build the entire medical network across the city, across the country out there, with all these partners having all these SKUs, which cannot be replicated immediately. It's a long drawn process for people to, come up with solutions, and the kind of products which we can build on these, plus the technology layer out there. So these investors came back saying that why don't you try to replicate something in these geographical areas? And there we say that yes, we can take this more forward. Once we are completely successful in India, we will definitely take this outside India.
That's very good to hear, Delhi. Faizan, your views?
Yeah, so you're 100% right. Technology can be exported out of India. But the problem is focus. You see, even if you go back to the MENA region, MENA is a very great region for Indians because there's a lot of Indians there. And you can see with Zomato, right? They had a very good business in the UAE region, right? But the problem that comes down is dilution of focus. Even that's one of the reasons why they exited that industry, right? I mean, we want to serve as many customers as we can, but we have 1.5 billion people here. We have a strong government support. We have very, very good momentum. It becomes very hard for us to go ahead and, reduce our attention and then say, okay, I'm going to do this to another country. In fact, at one point of time, I was sitting with one very, very good entrepreneur. I don't want to name him because I haven't taken his permission. And he was telling me that he explored going into Southeast Asia and he did a lot of good progress there. But the biggest challenge was that the amount of focus he lost because of Southeast Asia, he ended up losing market in India. So I think while I agree with you that it's a good thing, I think it's more important to remain focused in our country because the consumer challenge is that large. So we have so much opportunity. I'm not too sure if it will be something that will make sense in the short term.
No, that's a good perspective. Vivek?
So coming from the business model we operate, or coming from the market opportunity we operate, Prakash, it goes without saying that India is going to be an incredible story for us. There's no doubt about it, because we live in a place which is still kind of in a developing state in terms of looking at healthcare infrastructure. More and more opportunities are linked to the present condition of healthcare infrastructure in India. So obviously it goes, just like a great, kind of opportunity for us or geography for us to operate in. We do have, customers coming in from other countries also. During pandemic, we have seen massive surge of customers coming from, say, Middle East, African market, European market, Eastern European market. We had done a lot of shipments to China, even when India pandemic story hadn't even begun. But these markets essentially remain still kind of not so great opportunity for us to look at this point in time, for obvious reason, because we have to be focused on Indian market in a larger context. We talk about such a large number of healthcare. There are close to 400,000 plus healthcare institutions or what we call as healthcare centers in the country. It might be mix of a polyclinic to a nursing home to many other leading specialty hospitals and care providers throughout the country. And we have then to add so many doctors, so many dentists, everyone looking for such opportunities to get to the rightful way of getting technology helping them meet the challenges of procurement or medical supply. So I think goes without saying that it's there in our focus for next few years or so. And then we can look at markets like Africa or Eastern European countries or moving to, say, South American, Latin countries, or maybe Southeast Asian countries where we have seen maximum customer flow happening on the platform and people are doing procurement for us. For themselves through the platform, from the platform we are operating now.
With that, Prakash, I think we should come to the final questions. And to all of you, we are in this Money Matters show. I don't know if you had the opportunity to see, we've been doing this for last 2 years. And one of the questions which I, love to ask entrepreneurs, and I would love to ask you individually as people, as humans, as entrepreneurs, what has money meant to you? What's your relationship with money and what does it mean to you?
You want me to start, Shraddha?
Yes, please.
Money as an entrepreneur or as a founder has always been a kind of cat and a mouse story for us. The more you get, the more you want. The more you see, the more you desire to get it, right? The reason being because we are driven by ambitions and aspirations. And for us, any money you put in is not going to solve the problem what we are trying to address here today. So the more you want to attract money coming from, say, various funding activities or investment activities, has to be likely to be utilized in the business. So as founder, obviously money means a lot to me, a lot to us, in fact, as founders, group altogether. And that is how we try to get more to it, and we try to get more investment in the business we are into. And that's what we try to achieve with the relationship with money. And on top of it, managing money itself, as business, one side is that how do you get money and how do you manage money? When you're thinking of managing money, I think it's important to learn the art of managing money. Many people, though, I've been a bit more sensitive towards spends, towards cost, and towards trying to save money or making it not so splurging on various activities or what we are trying to do. So I think that management of money is very critical for a founder or an entrepreneur. That's how you learn to understand, the way you spend, or how can you optimize your spend? How can you look at better, cost optimization? How can you try to be much more grounded and not go splurging on advertising or kind of technology build up, or hiring people with any kind of tech aspirations, and maybe putting more and more money splurging on things and activities beyond your control will also not be great for a founder to look at. So I think raising money obviously is important, because you keep on doing that as founder or as an entrepreneur. But management of money is even more critical for a founder to succeed in the long run. That's how I would summarize it.
Delhi, you.
Sure, Shraddha. I totally second Vivek. For me, money is a resource which is scarce. It has to be optimized to the best possible way to gain returns. Either you allocate resources for a large promotional campaign, or you keep expanding your tech budgets, or you get into investing in new products. It clearly depends on your priority. For an example, during the pandemic, we tried managing our costs to ensure we have a longer runway. Okay. And again, being in business is about making customers' needs met through a value chain and operations, which get supported by a business model. Our business model is authentic, unlike many of the high burn business models, which look at finding business models later in their life cycles. For all, it has to make money for investors, early investors, and later investors as well. So there is my 2 bits.
Delhi made a very strong statement and very underlying statements. Yeah, thank you. Yes, money is scarce and we have to use it extremely effectively. So thank you. Yes. Satish.
See, for me, I think money is a very important, but it's a tool, right? It's a tool to actually get to what you want to do. And it also enables you to sort of fructify a lot of ideas that you have, and then you need to take them to execution. And see, the approach that different people take is different, right? Some of them optimize for time, right? If you optimize for money, your time has to be longer. And if you optimize for time, most probably you'll have to spend a lot more money in the lift. Right? So it's essentially a optimization curve that you run, and then you decide at what speed you want to do this and at what cost you want to do it, right? But if you look at it, the question here is, if the market is pretty large, right? And then you have the right set of economics in place. So I think across all the markets, I think everybody is CM to positive. So hence strong economics there. But the point to note here is it's a very important tool. And the idea is to see if you can deploy the right amount of capital and ensure that there is significant growth. Now, the reason why growth is very critical is primarily because I strongly believe that any great business in India cannot live with like touching like 1 million people, right? That's not really great business in India. If you have to like really be great business in India, you touch like 400 million people, at least 400 million families. Then the families will be into the house, right? So if you have to like get to so many people and provide them good quality healthcare, that needs scale. So in order to reach a lot of people and really touch the lives of like 1 billion people in this country, I think it's an important tool. Of course, there are a lot of other tools also, like the right team, the right technology, the right product, but might be hopefully if you have the right business and the right customers, most probably you should be able to attract the right funding, which has always been the plan, and then we'll continue to sort of do that. And the one thing is for sure, right? Companies find it very difficult to scale in India. If you look at stock markets, if you look at markets at the revenue scales, very tough to build scale in India because of the maybe different cultures, different backgrounds, and businesses fundamentally have a lot of regulatory challenges also. But given technology-based solutions that can build scale in the country, if you're able to identify and help a lot of people, and to get all of this done, I think money is the real critical tool. And that's how I sort of look at it. And then definitely use that to help a lot of people.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Very beautiful. Thank you. Faizan.
Yeah, so quickly to add to what Satish was saying, I think he's perfectly right on the fact that there are different markets and every market is different when it comes to what is the importance of money. So coming to a business which is generally like, burning a lot of money, like medicine delivery, you have to understand that everything revolves around growth. Your ability to attract capital goes back to how fast you grow. And how fast you grow is then automatically, makes your ability to raise a lot more easier. So for our businesses, unfortunately, I would say in the words of Jack Welch, cash is king. So we need the money. The money has to be in the bank at all times. We need to always raise way before the time that is actually required, and that cycle continues. Because unlike B2B businesses, in these B2C kind of businesses, there's so much competition and there's so much amount of market pressure, right? That unless you're in the, I would say, the highest edge of constantly raising, it makes it very, very difficult. So I agree with Satish on the fact that yes, it is very, very critical that every market is different. And I think that something like this would require a lot of capital. So I think, you have to keep your eyes on your cash flow, not necessarily P&L, but cash flow is very, very critical.
Thank you. It just feels like I'm talking to entrepreneurs right now. Such focus, such brilliant, and such, I would say you've put emphasis on money because we've seen in the last so many years, right? Because money is a very paramount tool when we see success. Not that it defines it, but it definitely pushes it and it definitely shapes it. So yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot to all of you. Prakash, your question, please.
Yes, no, so we are towards the end, and I will ask a question about banking. As entrepreneurs, as founders, as businessmen who are building a very highly scalable, fast-paced business with tech, what is your expectation from banks? And this is my favorite question in this series, so would love to hear everybody's view. And let's start with maybe Satish.
Yeah, Prakash. So, see, right? I think all businesses, when they're building, they need financing, right? Different kind of financing for different kind of businesses that is so. But we can broadly put maybe 3 to 4 parts of it. See, a lot of businesses in India, banking fundamentally, and that also we have got, let's say, the PSU banks as well as, let's say, the new age banks that has come like HSBC. Now, primarily what has happened is a lot of this was based on collateral, right? The concept of financing in India and pretty much everybody is collateral, right? You're building a house is the collateral. You're buying a car is the collateral, right? You're building a factory, machine is the collateral. But that is essentially how a lot of this was like primarily built. Now, suddenly when a lot of our solution is people come and ask, what is the infrastructure that you have? I show one computer and one internet connection, right? And then suddenly people are like, where is this funding? What am I funding, right? Because unable to understand what is collateral here, right? So maybe that is a key point to this. Real estate understands as a big building there in the process. So a lot of, let's say, thinking initially in the banking sector comes from, is there a collateral here? And because there's no collateral, it's very difficult to do funding in the process. And then the other extreme of that is, let's say, the VC, right? The venture capital who believes that if there's a great idea and then the great technology and great execution of the same one, potentially you will be able to get to profitability, depending upon how much time you can actually do that in the process. Now, the cost of capital is very different, right? This comes at like 9%. The cost of VC capital will be anywhere in the range of 35 to 40% cash, right? And then now there are a lot of new ideas, which I think banks are coming up with, which is like right in the center, right? A variation of that is venture debt, which actually is running at like 22, 23% the cost of capital. And then we have a modification of all of this, essentially called as revenue-based financing, right? Which I think a lot of you are doing that because you might not have profitability and EBITDA, but at least you have cash flows that is coming in. Then you have got a lot of WC, working capital, and a lot of work related to revenue-based financing. So a lot of these new age companies would require you to sort of look at not from a collateral perspective, but which is something that you really understand very well, but might be from how cash flows are happening. and what is the stability of, let's say, working capital, right? I think Vivek will have a lot of good quality clients on the other side, but of course they would need that 30 days or 60 days time to rotate it around in the process. So, and then most of this would mostly fund business growth and not necessarily maybe business losses, but losses might be funded primarily through maybe, let's say, venture capital, but business growth, working capital, deploying capital in a new growth area or a new geography, a lot of this can be provided by new age banks. And we just have to look at maybe how to evaluate the risk. And then, of course, the interest rates will sort of decide that. But you have a range, right? You have like 9% sort of to 40-45%. And then hopefully, but a lot of new banks are sort of understanding. And that's also why a lot of new lending methodologies are coming in. Hopefully, they'll grow in India.
Vivek, your business is working capital intensive, and I know that. Why don't you share your expectations from banks?
Sure, absolutely, Prakash. And just kind of echoing to what Satish said, but let me start with a basic concept here that 10 years back, if we looked at banking, it was customer banking. Yeah. When we look at banking today, it is ecosystem banking. When I say customer to ecosystem journey is very important for a platform like Medicabazaar, because we are not doing banking for ourselves. We are doing banking for our customers, our seller partners. We are doing banking for our entire ecosystem, right? So the banks have to be flexible enough to offer a solution which is meant to offer an ecosystem-centric solution. You know, a bank which cannot offer a solution to our customer is not relevant to us. A bank which cannot offer solution to our seller partners is not relevant to us. So in today's ecosystem banking, it is important and pertinent to have a solution-centric, a very strong digital-centric banking, which can reduce the loads of paperwork, you know, can take decisions promptly in terms of funding a customer, can understand the needs of customer cycle and immediately, you know, kind of take decisions. You know, we work with various NBFCs also today on the platform. We have a tool called Medicabazaar Freedom, you know, where we work with a very small startup, say, for example, NBFCs who are operating with a very limited cash ability to serve customers. The decision comes in like in minutes, and you just see happening it on the platform. We have direct integration, and it's just like in minutes of time, they are kind of given an up, you know, kind of a wallet or kind of a limit which can be immediately utilized, which can be used by the customers and can be very flexible in terms of looking at the solutions which we expect from. So I think, you know, having said so, anything which is solving the problem of our entire, you know, need from our sellers to our customer to our maybe, you know, our own banking requirement is what we are looking at today.
Delhi?
Thanks, Prakash. So I've been a banker in the past and I understand the risk and exposures during lending. I believe there needs to be a balance between managing risk as well as promoting business, as resource allocations are most crucial for businesses. It would be great if bankers and lenders could set up different criteria for various businesses instead of one size fits all, you know, some kind of customized solutions for us, which can help us manage our cash flows much better out there. While I also believe there has been a lot of work done on easing the process out there, it would be great if you could ease it further in terms of documentation, lengthy processing times out there.
Perfect. Let's hear from Faizan.
I actually agree with my co-panelists here. It's really simple. I think, you know, one side of it, Satish has really covered well on the side of, you know, what kind of funding do we really need. But whereas the other part of it, which I think, honestly, I'll put a little pressure on you here, operationally, come on, solve it. Please solve it. There's really no need to have, we are in a technological age. We're in an age where everything is running on technology. We still have situation where, you know, even something like salary dispersal payments, like, I mean, I don't think anybody should ever think about that, right? But we still have problems like that. I think it's very, very critical to get the operational and the speed part into a completely different level. I guess because we're coming from entrepreneurship and we're looking at technology slightly differently, it sounds much more simpler to us. And I'm sure there is a lot more to it. And I understand where that comes from. But I think that would be the lowest hanging fruit for me, because that's where I would find, you know, I find it very unacceptable that, you know, even in today's day and age, that it's quite hard to get something done. So yeah, that's all. I'm just giving candid feedback.
No, I think these feedbacks are very essential. In fact, and Shraddha knows this, we have gained a lot as a team just from the feedback from this genre of entrepreneurs, if I can say. As Satish said, we have always done lending for the old economy businesses, right? So it's a lot of learning. And I think one assurance as a banker, generally, I would give that every bank is acknowledging this problem statement for them to solve. And there's a lot of work happening. Like we're doing something with Vivek's company, we're doing something with Satish's company. And in every use case is learning for us, because lending was never done for businesses like this. So it's definitely an area we're serious about. So thank you. And back to Shraddha for closing.
Prakash, it reminds me of our subject. This is HSBC Build and Grow Money Matters series. So we are all building and we are all growing, and hopefully growing and building together, because one of the things that pandemic has taught us very, very closely, that we can't do it alone, and we have to collaborate and do it together. And thank you today, the entrepreneurs today, all of you, Vivek, Delhi, Faizan, Satish, all of you, so candidly, so openly, and so generously shared with us. And I just think that it was, it was 4 of you, so we had a long discussion, but I think we need to go deep dive with each one of you and listen to what you're doing and building, how you're building your stories. Thank you so much. We wish you all the very best, and we hope that the cash keeps coming, the cash flow is there, and the money keeps growing, and you keep building businesses, as Satish, you said, which not just impacts few people, but millions, more than 400 million people. And thank you all the very best, and we'll keep tracking your journeys. Thank you.